Hello everyone and welcome to Spotlight Season 2. I'm very excited to be undergoing this project once again with some of my favorite content creators that I've met over the last 10 years of doing Megadads. I'm very reflective on everything that I've done over the last 10 years, all the people that I've met, all the people that I've had an opportunity to work with, and there are several of those folks that I consider to be great influences on everything that I've done here at Megadads over the last 10 years, and some of them I consider to be really good friends. And today's guests are certainly the best way to kick off Season 2 of Spotlight. When I began Megadads 10 years ago, these were the first people that I reached out to see if they would be interested in some sort of cross collaboration. I was new to podcasting. I was certainly new to any form of content. And when I found the Nintendo Dads, there was an instant kinship, and I reached out, and we were both beginning our journeys at the exact same time. So I think there was a lot of fresh enthusiasm as we were embarking on what are very divergent paths, but also parallel paths. We've gone through a lot of the same things. We started at the same time with a passion for gaming that we grew up with, and we're continuing to foster that enthusiasm with our kids. And last year I had the opportunity to attend PAX alongside Justin Masson. We walked the show floor together. We had drinks at the hotel bar together. We stayed at the same hotel, not the same room, even though he begged me incessantly to, well, we won't get into the details. It's not appropriate. But we had an interesting conversation, which kind of led to me wanting to do another season of Spotlight. We've both been in this game for 10 years nonstop, and we were talking about the people that we've met along the way, the friends we've made, the relationships that have frayed or severed, and our love of this industry, but also the toll that it takes on a 40-some-year-old guy who's got grown kids and a wife and real-life obligations. It's kind of always been what we've both been about at Nintendo Dads and Megadads, that balance of the gaming life and the real life. But 10 years deep into creating content, it certainly takes a toll on your personal life, but it also has a sweetness to it because we've cataloged so many meaningful experiences and we've had so much fun along the way. That's what I wanted to talk to these three about. I have the original founding members of the Nintendo Dads, Justin Masson, Jesse Waldak, and Zach Erickson. I hope you enjoy our conversation between the Megadads and the Nintendo Dads. Enjoy.
Jesse, your background's giving me flashbacks, dude. This is great. It's like nostalgia.
Same background from 10 years ago.
I know, it's awesome.
How long has it been since you guys have podcast together?
The three of us together, just the three of us, has probably been about 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it would have probably been right before I moved to Ireland, which was 2017.
Oh yeah, that was around when Marty came on, hey?
Yeah, because Marty was coming on to potentially replace me because we didn't know really what my availability was because time zones, they're a bitch and all. And so, yeah, Marty came on at that point. So it would have been...
You have a hard time distinguishing between Mountain and Central, so then you go to Ireland.
Yeah, well, listen, that one I was able to sort out, all right? Yeah, so I think it would have probably been 2017, probably, was our last time that all three of us were together.
Holy crap. That's crazy. And Nintendo Dads in general is, you guys are also celebrating your 10 years, right? This year.
Yeah, October, I don't know what the exact date is, late October, early November will be 10 years and 500 episodes.
Dang.
Jeez. That's crazy.
We are tracking towards that, which is sort of unbelievable. Yeah.
How does that feel? Because, I've been doing it for 10 years, but, for a great long chunk of that, I was only doing once a month because heck with that, right? And
When we started, I had teens and everyone else had really little ones.
Yeah.
And now everyone else has teens.
How old are your kids now, Justin?
Turning 14 and 16.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah,
my oldest now.
Really? Yeah. That's funny because Nick's was the Thanks for listening to Nintendo Dads. That's the bumper at the end that we continue to use, despite the kid who's probably his voice is now dropped or whatever it is, right?
It has absolutely. Yeah, he's going through the stage right now where he's fake. I don't know if faking is necessarily the right word. I think he's convinced himself as much as anybody else, but he's going through the like, I've had a cold for 6 months, sort of like.
Buy some Zyrtec. Take one a day and go to get your ass to school.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
no, it's entirely. His voice is definitely dropped. That's great.
You should get him to redo it for the 10-year anniversary.
And it should be. What's the bumper again, Jesse? Play it for us again.
Thank you for listening to Nintendo Dads.
It should be. Why are you still listening to Nintendo Dads?
So we've all been around the block and doing this for a long time, and I realized that, like, okay, so my son will be 10 in June, so like they pretty much coincide with when I started doing this to when my firstborn came around, and I realized that
I remember you said your first episode was still when your wife was pregnant.
Yes, yeah, it was like he was preloaded, and I've realized that I'm like way better at one of these things than the other. I'm driving Elliot home from karate tonight, and he's sitting next to me, and he's starting to ask, like, his brain is working, and he's starting to ask questions like completely randomly. And he says, "Dad, like when you have a baby?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know how people have babies?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you get to like pick when you have a baby?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, do you get to choose when you have a baby, or is it like totally random?"
The answer is yes.
And I'm like,
to both of those questions.
And I'm alone with my son, and my first thought is, I need backup. Or like, I'm 10 minutes from home. I have to address this somehow, but I realize I completely have no faculty to deal with this.
We're not expecting that talk yet, hey?
Right,
Regis, I need to call a friend. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, can I put you on hold while I get my manager?
It's
Maybe a 50-50.
like I punted. I was like, well, I mean, you have to like, obviously you couldn't have a baby. And he's like, well, yeah. And then there was just like an awkward silence, and I'm like waiting to see if he takes it any further, and he didn't. But I felt like, oh my God, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. Like I knew this question was coming, but he's starting to ask questions now that I am absolutely not prepared for.
Well, right now I don't have to do a damn thing. Yeah, my son still lives at home. The other two have moved out years ago. But really, he's almost like a roommate at this point. He pays me rent. He does his own thing. He goes to work on his own schedule, and we might have 2 dinners together because of our scheduling conflicts. So right today, I'm not really doing a hell of a lot for parenting.
Well, you must have done something right. You're getting some money out of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how you transition that to passive income, right? Like, come on, like, that's a monetization model that we all need for this, don't we?
So when he moved back home, he owed me a bunch of money, and then I lent him more money to buy his car when he got his license, which was one of the stipulations. If you're moving back home, you're getting your license, because he didn't have one at the time, because I wasn't going to drive him everywhere. So he's making car payments to me to pay me back, and he's paying rent, which is working down his debt to me, and he's paid off like a month or 2 ago, finally. So what I'm going to save now that $200 a month surplus income, and when he finds his own place again, I want to give it back to him and say, here, you could use this as your deposit.
After skimming a little bit off the top, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Zach, what about you? How do you feel your parenting journey has gone?
I feel like mine is a little bit unique here, maybe because basically during the last couple of years that I was doing Nintendo Dads, I was in school to become like a therapist, like psychologist. So I know all the things not to do, and I still catch myself doing them.
Right.
But I think in general, like things like those kinds of conversations, I think my wife and I swing the opposite direction, where we've sort of taken the philosophy that like there are no taboo conversations. I don't want to say we force them on our kids, right? But we're like, I've talked to my kids about all sorts of stuff, but it is definitely an uncomfortable thing still. Like even though I know like roughly what to say in those situations, that doesn't make it easy.
That's just it. Like logically, I'm like, I know how to handle this, but sitting there in the car and having it actually volleyed at me, like I froze. I had no idea what to do. So
yeah.
I mean, I think it's constant failure. If I'm being completely honest, right? Like I do sort of like, I honestly think that, and Jody and I used to make a comment about parenting, and I know this will make it sound like we're horrible parents, but it's like 80% of just absolute shite, right? Like really uncomfortable, hard, difficult. Like one moment they love you, the next moment they hate you, and you think you're the worst thing in the world, right? And that you're failing. But there's a 20% where you're like, wow, this is amazing, and that 20% offsets that 80. And I think that every stage in parenting, you find that, right? It's just whatever that 80% is bigger, right? You know, when the kids were young, it was lack of sleep, it was not eating their food, it was, you know, potty training, like those things are just like, oh my gosh. And now and
then it continue to get worse until they're like 19.
Now they're 16 and 14, and so their problems have just scaled, right? They've just become bigger problems, right? And so now we're talking about social media and boys and all of these things that you're like, and the changes in their body and the emotions and like all of those, like your brain is still evolving. You're not a person yet. Like the amount of times I've had to tell them that you're not a person yet. Your brain is still shifting and growing. So we have to help you with logical decisions. So yeah, I constantly think I'm failing, with just slight glimmers of like, okay, they're gonna be okay, and we're doing an all right job.
One thing that I often think about is like, I surround myself with toys and fun and entertainment, and like, I think a lot of people our age have grown up with like this pop culture brain, right? And that's matured with us. I mean, you see it today with, you know, Marvel movies that are so big, and all these, it's IP, and there's this whole sense of like, the older you get, you're still young. And something that I always think is like, I wonder if there's going to be a certain point where my kids outgrow me. Like, I wonder if that's going to be a thing in the next generation. Because like my parents,
what would that look
I think
like?
of my parents.
That kind of happened to me a little bit with my son, and you know, it's one of those. Okay, I'm proud of you because of this moments, because you know, he's always liked what I liked. Yeah, he's been a gamer since he was 2. But you know, he works at a hardware store, and he's a low level manager now. But before that, he was like the main repair guy of the steel products. So he knew how to take apart a chainsaw, change the carburetor, put it back together, crap like that. And he started using mumbo jumbo words that I didn't understand. I'm like, this is the first time this has ever happened, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
It means you're growing, you're doing things that I don't do, and that's a good thing. You can continue to learn new things. You don't always have to do what I do.
Right. Break out of that shell a little bit.
But like, I hear like Adam, like it almost is like, it's almost like this existential dread of like, oh, but like one day, like I'm gonna be some old man in a nursing home and like the world has moved on, sort of deal. Like, is that the kind of...
Well, like, I don't know. I feel like when I think of my parents and when I think of when I was a kid and I looked at adults, it wasn't that, you know, like adults, at least in my view at the time, were super responsible and dealt with all the stuff. And I, as a 43-year-old man, I still feel young. I still feel attached to all those things that I was attached to as a kid. And I wonder if, because I am that kind of parent, if my kids will kind of bounce away from that, you know, and lean more into being independent and, oh my God, Dad's just a big ass goof. Like, look at Dad and all his shit, and he's sitting there and he's playing his games. I just wonder if that's coming in my future or not. Because I don't necessarily want one path or the other for my kids, but I think about that. Like, I wonder what they are going to look like at that point.
I feel like for me at least, I think a lot of the nerdy stuff in the video games is like it is the way in, and it, like, I hate to get all like therapist on it, right? But that's just what I do now. But like it's like that is the where like attachment happens, right? And that's the kind of thing where like you now have a relationship. You can sit down. I know that like my parents were awesome in a lot of ways, but I can probably count on one hand how many times my dad sat down and played video games with me. Right? We both played video games like kind of around each other in the same house, but never like sat down together very often. And man, like me and Nick and Logan, who's like actually 4 of my kids, like we'll play like Fortnite, was it like the squads, like 4-player or whatever, right? And the 4 of us will all play together all the time. And then that's like, okay, like we're around each other, we do similar things, and then when life gets hard, it's not like I'm just this stranger that just shows up in their life. I'm actually somebody who they've had a lot of fun with in the past, right? And so that's I don't know that it's necessarily all that important if they like the stuff or not, because it's not about the stuff, it's about your relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know Justin has kind of a similar story to mine about, fathers and distance and absence and things like that. And that's the other side of the coin, right? Like I don't have any memories of my dad really enjoying time with me. Not to be too dark about it, but like when Dad was around, it was a very awkward thing because Dad wasn't really around. And so
Yeah,
I love
same here.
the
My dad
fact
never
that-
really played games. I got into games because of my mom. Pre NES, like Atari and television stuff. But she really couldn't handle games beyond technology beyond that, because even this Mario Brothers screen scrolling would make her nauseous. So that pretty much put an end to her gaming. So it was like my brother and I just pretty much did our own thing for gaming growing up.
But I think about, like, regardless of whatever trajectory my kid's life goes on, they will have that memory of Dad sat down and did these amazingly fun things. Like we went to PAX together.
Yep.
We went to Disney World together. We did all these things that I didn't experience as a kid. So I think sowing that seed is enough that, whatever they choose to do with their life, is what they choose to do with their life. But they will have that knowledge that I was around when they were kids and we had great times together.
Yeah,
Justin, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Like, I think you're planting seeds, right, and places for them inevitably to come back to, and that these are memories that they're attached to in a way that is so uniquely special. And so, same with, like, my kids are sort of grown out of video games, right? Morgan loves playing
For now.
Yeah.
They'll come back.
Yeah, like they're she's playing Stardew Valley right now. That's her, like, she just keeps playing that, and we'll occasionally play Fortnite, right, Zach? Similar to your kids. But those are great moments. But they're also, like, super vested of, like, oh, Dad got another controller from Power Ray, so let me do a recording, and hey, now we're gonna go to Nintendo Live and look at all these awesome access that we get and get to see all these special things and being part of that. So there is memories being created around those things, whether it is intrinsically associated with Nintendo or video games, or whether it's just being present with my dad doing something. That's the thing that I hope. It could be whatever. It could be we're painting, if the memory is, hey, not of that whole thing that we did in PAX in Seattle, but rather, like, man, I love the fact that when we were in the airport, Dad went and grabbed me a Starbucks and we sat down for 10 minutes. If that's your memory and that's the thing you're attached to, man, I'm just so happy I was there for that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy that you're attached to that. So, I think it's, parenting is tough, right? Like, just, it is tough. Every season is tough.
Well, let's we got serious for this first half.
Sure, that was. I was like, wow. When are we starting this? By the way.
Yeah. No, man. We're in it. We are knee deep in it. Speaking of tough, and this is more for Justin and Jesse. Is it hard to be a Nintendo creator right now?
Getting into the Wii U era type of content.
That's what Nintendo had started, was the Wii U era.
Yeah,
dude.
like this.
Born in fire.
Yeah, this is sort of my message. All of you Nintendo content creators that came out during the Wii U, you didn't pay your dues, right? Y'all came out during the Switch. We were there in the Wii U when we're talking about like Star Fox Zero for 6 weeks straight, because that's all the content drip that we can actually get. So listen,
content could help.
Yeah, like go sit down, all you Nintendo Switch podcasts that just started up. Is it hard to be a content creator for Nintendo? That's a really great question. I would say not anymore, right? I think at times it was difficult, but I don't think so anymore. I think Nintendo has had such a banger year for the last 7 years. Continues,
and even if we do have a slow news week, we still, we'll have 15 questions from the community.
Yeah, sure.
So we have stuff we can make content, a 3-hour show on still.
Have you heard about the
3
game
hours.
Princess Peach? Like, let's talk
Settle
about
down.
how amazing that game is. All right. Yeah, it's
so much, huh?
it is I think video games in general is such. I mean, if you're having a hard time with talking about Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation, they all bleed into each other at this point in some way, right? So
Yeah.
having a conversation about the larger video game industry and like, Xbox talks about now no longer being exclusive with some of their games. Wow, that's a pour over to Nintendo very fast. Let's talk
Right.
about that. What are we gonna predict that's gonna be there, right? And so I think it's fairly
We
easy.
picked 3 games and we were dead on.
Yeah. So, is it hard to be a PlayStation fanboy, Adam? Huh?
I will
What
say
games
this.
do you have coming out this year, Adam?
With Final Fantasy VII, he's set for the year.
I really am. Jesus.
Yeah.
Especially if you start Persona 3, yeah, you're good until 25.
I find that the last couple of years, it's really difficult to cover anything because it moves so fast.
Yeah.
And when you're not a large team, it's like right now, to Jesse's point, like I'm playing Final Fantasy VII, and that's all I want to play. And realistically, that's going to take me a couple of months to play. Is that good content to continue to talk about the same game month after month after month? No, because the news cycle is so fast, and nobody lets anything sit. Nobody lets anything rest and appreciate. It's like, well, this game, the Spider-Man 2 came out in September, and by early October, everybody's moved on to the next thing, right? And I find it's just kind of frustrating because no matter how good a game is, or no matter how much a great moment happens within that sphere, nobody really appreciates it for like longer than a week.
Yeah, I think that's such an apt statement, right? I kind of make a statement in kind of the Nintendo Dads community when we're talking about content creation, that if we can't get content out on a game in about 5 days from when it's dropped, we've lost any validation in that conversation, right? Someone else has filled that space. There are exceptions to that. I do think there are exceptions. Like I think Tears of the Kingdom is a great example, right? We were able to talk about that for 3 weeks, and Animal Crossing, I think, like that. But there are for the most part,
the smaller indie games, they don't necessarily have to be day and date on release. You can talk about it a few weeks later, and there's still timeless conversations. The game will still be there, and again, only 2% of the population will even know they exist.
Yeah, but your point is very correct, right? And I think that's interesting for you as a team who records monthly, right? Like, what are the big nuggets that you're pulling out? Because by the time it gets to you, it's already been hashed. Like Game Informer's talked about it, IGN, Game Explained, Kind of Funny. Everyone's had their angles on it, right? So what are you adding by that point? Whereas I think for us, it's sort of this weird, like, but I like that because you guys can at least be more retrospective. We're like, this is the news, this is our reaction to it, and now let's see what churns in the next week from now.
One of the reasons why I like how we moved to Thursday night recordings, because a lot of news drops will literally drop 8 p.m. tweet Thursday night. I'm like, okay, let's get this into the notes real quick. We start recording in 20 minutes.
After 10
Literally
years,
that fast.
After 10 years as both a podcaster and a parent, I've come to just accept the fact that I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
I sit in that space comfortably.
Yeah.
I think is more of like a consumer of podcasts now than a creator. I think one of the things that I appreciate more now is how much like most of the people, and it would be interesting to poll like communities on this. I don't think people actually come to podcasts or like Mega Dads or like Nintendo Dads for the news. Like they actually come to it for you guys, right? And they come to it for the community, right? If they want news, then like that's fine. But they actually like they're there because of the people that are there and because they feel like some either camaraderie or similarity and like that actually is like it can sometimes feel like that's not anything new, but it's coming from you, so it is new. Right? Like it's quite a bit different.
Like early on, we'd be lucky to get 5 people in the chat, and they're normally just commenting on what we said, and that's it. But now we sometimes we can get 30 or 40 people in there, and they're actually having their own conversations outside of what we're doing within the chat. So I'm like, okay, that's awesome.
Zach, do you feel your perspective on podcasts in general has changed on the other side now?
I just don't have nearly as much time to listen to podcasts, honestly. I wish I did.
Do you feel like you listen a lot less now?
I listen to a lot, like I listen to a lot wider.
Yeah.
Like the breadth of topics is a lot more. And a lot of it even has to do with like stuff that's maybe more, I guess, like more work related in a sense, right? Sure. Just in terms of like psychology and stuff like that. But I do still have, I do still also check in with like video game content and with other like more nerd related content. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are like that. And I think that, a lot of people, it's much more about who are my go-to people. Right. That I really appreciate their perspective. I don't want to have to listen to a million people. Like back in the day, I would listen to like Radio Free Nintendo and like half a dozen other Nintendo podcasts and listen to the same people rehash the same the same news. And now I'm like, man, I like just give like I'll check in with the people that I need to check in with, and that's it. And then I've got like more. Like I'm sometimes spread so thin that I just don't really have the bandwidth for it, right? So yeah, it's definitely much more about who the people are that I'm getting that information from. Like the people that like, yeah, you know what, my opinion is similar to these people, and so that's who I'm going to listen to.
Right.
I've shaved off a lot of podcasts I don't have time to listen to anymore, but I still have Radio Free Nintendo in my rotation, but it's a lower priority, and so a lot of the shows gets pushed back, and over the years I'm literally 9 months behind. I'm starting to listen to an episode that they recorded in early June, not today, last year. Like, so they're reacting real time to the Everybody 1-2 Switch announcement, which happened right when they were recording, and it's hilarious listening to them talk about that.
Exercise in like internet history at that point.
Let me tell you about that goddamn game. All right. Everybody 1-2 Switch gets announced. I'm like, what is this crap, right? Then we go to Nintendo Live. And Justin, you and I had split off at this point.
Yep.
But we're at like the main stage. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, would you like to play Everybody 1-2 Switch up here on the stage? We're going to record it. We're going to put it on the YouTube channel. It's going to be fantastic. And I said, hell yes, I do. I want to play Everybody 1-2 Switch in front of all these people and look like a complete asshole. Then my wife comes and I'm like, hey, honey, guess what we're going to do? I convince my wife to get up with me in front of the whole audience. They prepare us to play Everybody 1-2 Switch. The game breaks. And when I say breaks, like they could not get this game to stabilize for more than 30 seconds at a time. And they had us try it for about 20 minutes. And it just kept busting and disconnecting and Joy-Con this and drift that. Needless to say, this thing never made it on the YouTube channel. But it was quite an experience standing in front of a whole.
I saw you. I walked past you. I was like, "Hey, Adam," and you were up there, and I was like, "I'm just gonna keep walking.
Just
I'm
shaking
not
my butt.
getting pulled up into
Shaking
this
my
thing."
butt with a Joy-Con in my pocket. Stupid. When you think back on Nintendo Dad's history, what do you think is the most iconic thing you have done in the history of the 10 years of Nintendo Dads? We're gonna go around the horn. I'm gonna start because I actually think it's this.
You sons of bitches. I'm driving, listening to podcasts, enjoying your shit. And then all of a sudden, no, Patreon. Don't subscribe to Justin. Don't subscribe to Nintendo Dads. They're not worth it. Spend your money over here. Fuck you guys. Fuck you. Ah!
Put that in. Justin, what do you think is the most iconic thing you've done in 10 years of Nintendo Dads?
That's a tough question because I have no problem being complete and utter fool, right? Like there's the time I decided to take my shirt off for charity on stream to try and raise money in a very cold Irish morning. I went back up to bed that morning, went to bed, and my wife was like, "Did I just hear you took off your shirt on stream?" I was like, "Yeah, don't do that again." I was like, "Okay."
On behalf of the internet, don't do that again.
Iconic moment.
You guys do an Extra Life this year? That's
we probably will. Let me, maybe a new stretch goal, right?
Stretch goal.
Yep. Iconic
stretch
moment.
Goal. Justin's OnlyFans for stretch goal.
Man, what is that? I don't know if I have. I the moment I keep going back to that really like cements some really cool moments for me, I think, is like when we had Per Schneider come on the show. That was a pretty cool moment. That was cool. That was pretty early on.
That was like bottom 10, right?
I think so, yeah. And then like Victor,
single digits,
yeah,
early double digits.
That was cool. I think our meetup with our community in 2022 when we were in New York, that was pretty iconic to have all these people show up at the bookstore and hang out with us and get to know our fans directly, and hang out with them, and then do like an Extra Life stream. Like it's tough because it's been a pretty incredible journey, like for 10 years. So to call it one thing specifically is super tough. And again, I also have no problem making myself an idiot on show, like saying wrong Pikmin or Pikachu names and stuff like that, or Pokemon. And
we got to meet
Wobblepuffet or whatever.
Wobblepuffet, yeah, all that. So I don't know. That's sort of my answer. It's probably a pretty broad answer, but yeah. Someone always has to play. It's a good clip, right? Someone always has to play the fool, and I have no problem playing the fool, right?
I have a multitude of problems. Zach, what about you? When you look back on your time with Nintendo Dads, what do you remember the most? What do you think is the most memorable thing you did?
Yeah, I think one of them actually was, there was this time, I actually had this come up on my like Facebook memories or something like that a little bit ago. I remember telling a story actually about my son Nick, who had lost his Kirby game. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he had played, I can't remember if it was like Kirby Triple Deluxe on 3DS or something like that. And I had just mentioned like, oh yeah, he was really sad because he had like lost the cartridge or something. And then all of a sudden, like in the mail shows up this copy of the game that somebody in our community, and it had a letter on it that was like, hey, that was addressed to Nick and said, hey Nick, I heard you lost your game. I was done with mine. I hope you I hope you enjoy it. Keep being awesome or something like that. Wow. And I was like, as like a dad who's you like move you to tears, kind of like the goodness of people, was like, that was really awesome for me. That was definitely, I would say, one of the big ones for sure. So yeah, that was awesome. So and it was like nothing to do with any, like we got to connect with all sorts of things, but like to me it was always like the community more than anything.
Yeah, the personal touch. Yeah. The only thing I've ever gotten from anybody in the Megadeth community is a restraining order.
Well, I had to. I mean, I don't know what like.
It was getting awkward.
It was getting weird. Okay, Jesse.
Wait, before I give mine, I do want to say Zach also gave us pretty much which become our almost a catchphrase. We still use it from time to time. High hopes, low expectations.
Dude, I use that in therapy all the time. I'm not even joking.
It's a great statement. Okay, I think my biggest. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like a life philosophy at this point, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, again, that was birthed in the Wii U era, as we were talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what I think of as my what I brought to the show is one of the most important things. Robo Jesse, I don't know if this is working.
Yes, it's working great, buddy. Well done.
Robo Jesse was born when I had COVID. I couldn't talk. Well, I could talk, but it hurt like hell. But I still was up for recording and producing and doing the normal stuff. I just didn't want to talk. So I originally, like version 1 of Robo Jesse was I found a text-to-speech engine that was free to use from Google. So if I wanted to say something, I typed something up, had it then speak it in text-to-speech and fed that into the stream. And then it's kind of evolved to I actually bought a voice changer license and can do this whenever I want.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Please tell me that you've given like 15-minute long reviews of like anime video games at some point using just Robo Jesse.
I have not, but I did have a VTuber model made. I haven't really used it more than once or twice. And I wanted to actually change, if I ever went to VTuber model 2.0, I wanted it to be a robot that looks like me, but more, silver, more square and polygonal, and use that voice.
The people
and so if you too want to support this madness, head over to patreon.com/Nintendo Dad so that we can support Jesse's
the
robot
people
body.
demand it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's so funny to like think back of like, I know this is a bit of navel gazing, right? To think back 10 years, 500 episodes. We really had no idea what we were doing. Zero clue when we started this thing, right? And like we had no idea it would spawn into what it is. No idea the community that would grow from it. We had no idea about the other podcasts that would spin off from it that are part of our community who are content creators. And we had no idea about the friends and relationships that we were going to build. We were literally just 3 people who had sort of a fun idea and wanted to geek out about video games with people who wanted to geek out about video games. That was it. Right. And like our first episodes, like I was sitting on a floor in my basement on Legos because it was the playroom and was like recording from an iPhone microphone like this. And they were absolute garbage. Right. Like you have no idea what is going to come of it. I love that. I think, to your point, Zach, community is the thing that I think you never knew what was there. Right, like you started. We just 3 guys, and then all of a sudden the community that came around. And Zach, you've used this statement before, which again we've adopted a couple things from you. We don't trademark any of it, so we don't have to pay you for it, by the way. But our corner of the internet, right, of finding the Nintendo Dads corner of the internet and finding like-minded people, like-minded communities, like the Mega Dads, right, and who are also content creators. Like there's so many relationships that spun out of it that we had no idea. Right, Sean Capri, Bobby Pauls. Right, like all of these relationships that like you had no idea, but you were all sort of bouncing around together and found this thing. It's funny you talk about it. Like 10 years for me is just under 25% of my life. This has been my part of my brand, right? Part of my routine, part of my community, and it's such a awe-inspiring moment to like sit back and look at it. And the thing that I sort of love the most about it. And this isn't even the question you're asking, Adam. I'm running my own interview now. So great question.
Take it away.
Is the show isn't about Jesse. It's not about Zach. And it's not about me. Right. And we've seen that, right? Zach left the show and it wasn't like the show crumbled. Right. The show definitely felt a dip. We brought another host. But the legacy, I think, of any of these things that we build is that they're beyond the host. Right. They're not in our control anymore. They're no longer ours. If Jesse, me, and all the hosts decide to pull up shop right now, we're like, peace out, I'm out. I can guarantee you there are people who will say, I will take that. I will step into that space and I will continue this this podcast. I'll continue this community. I will continue this thing because you created something valuable that we had no idea was going to happen. Again, 3 weird people just talking about some Wii U games. That was our hope, right? And it spawned something that we never saw coming.
When I look back on my personal journey, I feel like I started with exactly what you're talking about. And then I entered a period where it's like, okay, how can I make this as big and influential and make my bubble and my reach as grand as possible? And now that I've reached year 10, I've kind of gone full circle, and I've gone back to the reason that I continue to do it is for that exact thing. I get to get on the podcast with Antonio, and I get to talk with our Discord community and just bullshit about, whatever game we're playing, and I get to speak with friends like you. I mean, the whole point of doing this series is because I feel like lately, in the last couple of years, social media has become so fragmented that a lot of the connections that I used to have kind of spread out. And Justin, I haven't spoken to you since PAX, which was 6 months ago, right?
Yep.
But I consider you to be one of the better friends that I've made in this whole experience, right?
For sure.
So this is like a good excuse to get people back together. And I wanted to get you 3 here because you guys are the first ones that I ever reached out to after starting Megadads. And I can remember going on your podcast for the first time and feeling like, oh my God, there's other dudes out there. It's not just me talking with my brother about games. It's like there's other guys that I can bring in. We can have this bond and this friendship over. So I really wanted to do this, and I'm glad that we could get all 3 of you together because this is like really special, hopefully for you guys, because I'm having a blast.
And I, it's funny you talk about that, and this might be a inside baseball for those of the Nintendo dads and the Mega Dads community, but there is definitely a huge influence that Adam has had within the Nintendo dads community, because for several years you were doing monthly art cards for us. Right. As part of our Patreon, right? That was part of, so like all the art cards that we had done, I think we commissioned somewhere around 25 to 30 of them. Those were all done by you, right? We didn't have that skill, so we're like, Adam, you look pretty good at this stuff. Can you help us out? And
God, that seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, so like those were all done by you, and that was part of that Megadads community as well.
Super cool. Before we wrap things up, I got a few questions from our community. Spokes wants to know, what is your favorite classic NES game? We're going to start with Zach.
Oh, it is I think it's a tie between 2 different ones that I have maybe the most nostalgia for. I never had an NES growing up, but other people that I knew did. I'm going to have to go with Mario 3 or... Oh, I just really... Sort of excited, but not really. Old hockey game called Blades of Steel.
Blades of Steel.
That's a good one.
Justin, what about you?
Mario's are, of course, classic for sure, right? And I think Mario 3 is up there. But I think for me, my nostalgia is Mario 2, right? We've talked about that one in length. And then another one I would throw into that I loved was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade version. I think that's right. Yeah, that was I the amount of times I rented that from the local game store and nearly busted controllers by squeezing so hard on it. It was an amazing game.
Jesse?
I think mine would be Zelda 2. That game needs a remake next year.
You are still, like 10 years later, you're still like really just banging that drum, hey?
I am, but I think that is my favorite NES game, and recently came across a Windows remake of it that added additional features, including like a whole second, like a new game plus that added all new content, and played that earlier this year, and that was fun to play that again.
Coconut Wizard wants to know, what Game Boy game do you want them to make a current gen reboot of? Zach? Dig deep.
Oh, man. Again, I'll go with the nostalgia. I think you can get it on the Switch right now. I think it's what the collection is. Anyways, Final Fantasy Adventure, which turned later into the Mana series, but it was it's not even necessarily good, but that's kind of why. Like, it's very simple. I think it was like the Final Fantasy response to like a Zelda type game. So like a top-down.
In Japan, it was always Mana. They just called it Final Fantasy here.
Yeah.
for the brand recognition.
Exactly. In fact, I think way back somewhere on our on the Nintendo Dad's YouTube channel, you can find me playing as a let's play. So, Final Fantasy Adventure.
Justin, what about you?
I'm gonna go Super Mario Land 6 golden coins.
That's a good one.
Have they not remade that? I mean, or I should say repackaged it?
I don't think
They've never done anything with that game. Actually,
right? Am I right?
It's available on NSO, but it still looks like a Game Boy game.
Okay.
They have never enhanced
But
it.
didn't they? It wasn't only Super Mario Land 2 they put out, not the first one.
The first one's not there.
Yeah, I want the first one, Super Mario Land, the first one. Maybe
That's okay. That's not 6
Oh, I
golden
apologize.
that's not 6 golden
okay.
coins.
All right. Take
No,
my.
that's just 5 golden coins.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Super Mario Land, there he goes. That's the one I wanted. That was, man, I burned batteries with that thing.
With like with the weird like rubber ball instead of like shooting
Oh, that's
fire.
right. He had like the
Yeah.
weird bouncy ball thing.
Yeah, he had different
Yeah.
vehicles. He had an airplane and he had an underwater submarine. So they weren't doing.
The end of each world ended up being a shmup.
Yep.
That
Yep.
actually might be kind of cool. Remade.
Yeah.
And a bunch of weird like Egypt stuff and that. Yeah, that was good. I love that.
All right, Jesse, what about you? What do you got for me?
I think Justin's going to be surprised with my answer, but I want to say the Donkey Kong, which people call it Donkey Kong 94, even though 94 isn't actually part of the name.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I played that, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just like the arcade game redone a little bit. So I played through as I would the arcade, and I beat Donkey Kong, and normally he falls and lands on his head, but instead he catches himself, retakes Pauline, and splits. I'm like, what just happened? And it was basically the grandfather of what's the Mario and Donkey Kong series. The Switch just had a remake last month of the GBA game, and then there was March of the Minis for DS and whatnot. But that Donkey Kong 94 is where it all started.
I thought you were talking about Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy, because I remember that card. That was like a banana yellow card.
That was awful.
Yeah,
That's right.
That is not a game that should have been put on a Game Boy.
No, it shouldn't have been. But man, let me tell you, I destroyed some batteries on that thing too.
All right, I got one last question. This one's from me. You have to work for this one a little bit. I'm going to give you a little backstory here. There's been a recent quote that just came out from a head at Paramount Studios, and they want to turn the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies into an Avengers-level cinematic experience that brings together some of the franchise's biggest characters. I'm going to say that again. They want to turn the Sonic the Hedgehog movie franchise into an Avengers-level cinematic event. I want your response to that in 5 words or less.
Don't you dare.
You can reuse the F word as much as you want, up to 5 words, Justin.
Who fucking wants Sonic?
Okay.
Oh, Big the Cat, the movie.
All right.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to see it die.
I like
here's my real answer.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap.
There you go.
You can just say whatever you want.
You can say whatever you want.
Why are we
Deliver
milking
it.
Sonic?
Why are we okay? All right. I figured this was the best group to present this question to, so I appreciate you for not letting me down. Justin, Jesse, and Zach, thank you guys so much for coming on the show and for 10 years of great content. 10 years of content. I mean,
10 years of okay-ish.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being a part of my content story. Thank you for all the great stuff that you've brought over the years. And I hope you have many, many more years of Nintendo Dad's awesomeness.